I glanced down at the 2 white jugs TJ had set at his feet. I found Hope standing behind me. She was chewing on her thumbnail. Nervous. Everybody was nervous. The air hummed with it. The fence closest to me displayed a picture of a woman's lower body wearing only underwear, a pink slogan saying, "Victoria's Secret Christmas Panty Blowout." There were some faint clicks and clanks in the distance. Having heard it before, I knew it was the outer gate sliding open. Beyond the plastic sheeting of the inner fence, a military cargo truck rumbled in. We heard truck doors open and shut. Engine. Exterior gate again. Silence. The shot clock buzzer sounded once more, and the inner gate finally rattled open on its own. Laying on the grass, in the exact spot where I had been minutes ago, were 4 people. All of them young, looking to be college age. 3 guys, 1 girl. The 3 guys were in green suits, the girl in red. Their hands were bound behind them. "God damn it," muttered wheelchair guy from somewhere behind me. "Wish they wouldn't lay them on the ground like that. Those dudes are going to get a shock one of these days when Carlos comes up for a snack." I swear that every other sentence somebody uttered in this place sounded like a foreign language. It was starting to piss me off. The 4 new citizens of the undisclosed Spider quarantine stumbled awkwardly to their feet and shuffled into the yard. The split second the last one was through, the gate slid shut on its own. The mechanism was fast. I'd say 2 full seconds from fully open to locked. The huge blonde-haired guy, Owen, TJ had said his name was, shouted to them, "Welcome to quarantine. Please listen carefully to what I am about to say and don't talk until I'm finished. This will save you a lot of questions later." His voice echoed through the yard, huge lungs making the words split the air like a rifle shot in the woods. "As you can see, there ain't no guards here. There ain't no feds. There ain't no soldiers. They ran out on us several days ago, and that's just fine with us. We have food and water and medical supplies. You're welcome to whatever you need. That's the good news. Bad news is there ain't no mail. There ain't no phones. There ain't no internet. There ain't no televisions or radio. What we've got don't get a signal. We are cut off." Owen paused to let that sink in. "Also, there's no power. Maybe it'll come back and maybe it won't. We've been getting by without it, and we will continue to get by until somebody gets their shit together and comes and lets us out of this prison." Okay. So now that you're caught up on all that, let me get to the important part. There's a little more than 300 of us in here, and not a one of us you see here is infected. Pause again. He made eye contact with each of the 4, individually. "I thought Tenet said 500. "Yeah, that's right. Only reason we're still stuck in here is because even after 9 days, the feds ain't come up with a test that works. So they're guessing. And I'm going to bet that none of you are infected, neither. So here's how we do it. We got an expert here who can spot infection on sight. He's going to look you over, and once you've got a clean bill of health, we'll cut off those handcuffs, take you indoors, and get you set up with a room and some blankets and whatever else you need. Sound good?" Nobody answered. Owen looked at me. The new kids looked at me. Everyone else looked at me. I was not breathing. TJ said, "Do it, and then it'll be done." He walked me up to the first guy, a geeky-looking kid with acne cheeks. He was squinting because he had apparently lost a pair of glasses at some point. TJ said, in a voice that suddenly reminded me he had spent some years in the military, "I'm going to need you to open your mouth for me, sir." The kid's eyes darted around, looking for someone to rescue him from all of this. Man, chill out. I just need to check to see if a mind-controlling spider monster has possessed your head. He opened his mouth. Looked like a regular human mouth. Lots of cavities in his back teeth. I said, "He's fine." The kid closed his mouth and his eyes at the same time, relief rolling off him like a boulder. All at once it hit me that I was the most powerful man in the quarantine. TJ said, "Hey, what's your name, sir?" "Tim," said the geeky kid. "Welcome to quarantine, Tim. We're glad to have you." TJ spun him around and pulled out a pair of wire cutters. He snipped the plastic bands that served as handcuffs, and the kid immediately rubbed the deep red marks on his wrist. I moved to the next kid. Tall, square jaw. Probably played high school or college basketball. Without me asking, he opened his mouth and moved his tongue around, making sure I could see everything. Confident. Here was a guy who'd never failed a test in his life, mental or physical. Probably would be a senator someday. Perfect teeth. I said, "Yeah, he's fine." This one said, "Kevin," as TJ snipped off his cuffs. "Kevin Ross. And I can climb that fence in about 10 seconds if we can get something draped over that razor wire. Rip up some carpet from in there. Something like that." TJ said, "Yeah, that thought was thought before. Didn't work out so well." 2 people left now. The girl and a kid with curly hair who reminded me of Jonah Hill's character in Superbad. The girl was next. She was a hippie. I could tell, even dressed in a red prisoner jumpsuit. She had some haphazard braids in her hair and that dopey-looking trust in her eyes. Like she was seeing the goodness of your soul at a glance. She gave me what I can only describe as a tragic smile, and in a shaky voice said, "Hi, what's your name?" "David. Just open your mouth for me, okay?" "I feel like I'm going to be sick, David." "I'll stand off to the side then. This will only take a second." She smiled again. A tear ran down her cheek. I said, "Come on, open up." She did. She was a smoker, apparently. The front teeth had some yellow. Not a single cavity, though. Good for her. She was fully crying now. I said, "It's fine. It looks fine. You can calm down, okay? We'll all get through this." I put a hand on her arm. Look at me, acting all in charge and professional. "Don't worry. I'm the expert. She whispered something between sobs that I couldn't make out. What was that? Check again. I can if you want, but... Because a week ago, I had a pierced tongue with a stud in it. She squeezed her eyes and sobbed, trying to suck in breaths to get the words out. And now I don't. What? I don't But I did understand. She woke up one morning and realized her mouth was not her own. Oh, Jesus, no, no, no. She held her mouth open, extra wide this time. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. And, of course, I saw it. Between her lower front teeth and her lower lip, 2 black mandibles rested there. I recoiled in horror, and everybody nearby reacted with me. Owen was already on the move, striding toward the girl from behind, with purpose. She went down to her knees, weeping. TJ got in front of me, pushing me back away from her. I said, Okay. You said you got a cure, right? We've got a procedure here? TJ said, Cover your ears, man. He was cramming something into his ears. It looked like cotton balls. The people around me were covering their ears with their hands. But why are you... Owen stepped up behind the girl, pulled an automatic pistol from his waistband, and splattered her brains all over the grass in front of her. Her body flopped to the ground. The other 3 new arrivals flew into a panic. I had thought everyone was covering their ears for the gunshot, but then the piercing shriek started, the cry of the spider creature. I wedged my fingers into my eardrums as hard as I could. I could still feel it vibrating my bones. They worked fast. Owen, who I noticed had cigarette butts wedged into his ears, flipped the girl over. I could see the spider trying to detach and crawl out of her skull now, growing out of the girl's mouth like a huge, grotesque, black tongue. TJ uncapped both jugs, then carefully poured the contents of one jug into the other, mixing something. After a moment, steam or smoke emerged from the opening of this new concoction. Owen stepped back, and TJ poured the entire contents of the jug into the girl's mouth. The shriek was cranked up to a level that sent a tremor through my guts. The spider thrashed. The girl's cheeks and lips dissolved under the acid, the liquid running out of ragged holes in her skin. The spider was dissolving, too, legs falling off as it thrashed. Eventually, its horrific cries died down, and it was still. Owen stuffed the pistol into his pants and grabbed the girl's feet. He said, Come on, before Carlos comes calling. The one I'd been calling wheelchair guy shouldered past me and grabbed the girl's wrists. They dragged her toward the now roaring bonfire. On the count of 3, they tossed her corpse right into the blaze, sending an explosion of sparks heavenward. The flames tore into her flesh, and I smelled what I had mistaken for smoked barbecue ribs just minutes ago. Then, finally, I saw bones. In the bonfire, bones and bones and bones. It was full of them. Blackened skulls and ribs and pelvic bones and straight leg and arm bones jutting out like sticks. hundreds and hundreds of bones. The girl's hair was burning. Her jumpsuit was peeling off her in black strips like the skin on a hot dog roasted over a campfire. I was just talking to her. I will remember that smell for the rest of my life. I will never eat meat again. Owen said to me, "Get over it, bro. You got one more." No, that cannot be the only way to do this. Owen growled. Bullshit. You didn't have no problem when it was Sal you were calling out. Now you lose your fucking nerve? Man, I don't remember. Okay? Look, that was then. That's the past, and it doesn't matter now. I can't do that anymore. I'm sorry. There was a commotion behind me, and TJ shouted, "Hey, stop! Don't!" He was shouting at Kevin, the basketball player kid. He was sprinting toward the fence. The kid leaped, landing halfway up the fence with his fingers hooked in the links. He scrambled up toward the razor wire. He fell. He hit the ground like a crash test dummy. Limp, dead weight. A pool of blood spread below his face. A chunk of his skull was missing. I never heard the shot that took him out. I whipped my head around, looking for the gunman. I saw no one. In the sky were just some birds, gliding along with wings outstretched, riding the thermals, circling lazily overhead. Maybe they were buzzards, hearing the sounds of death like a goddamn dinner bell. TJ said, "Stupid motherfucker." What, he thinks we're all here because none of us know how to climb fences? Shit. I could have gave him an extension ladder. Got one in the maintenance room. The Jonah Hill-looking kid was paralyzed with fear. His hands were still bound behind him. His eyes were wide. His lips were white. His mouth clamped so tight it was pressing the blood out of them. Owen walked up behind him and put the pistol to the back of his skull. "You check him, or else we cure him right now. Him and everybody else who comes through that gate. Fucking Carlos running around here, that's bad enough. Now multiply him by 3 or 6 or a dozen. The feds will come into this place a month from now and find nothing but chunks of meat and bones and crawling nightmares. Well, I got a wife I'm going to get home to. I got a kid I'm going to get home to. The feds left us in here, left us to get torn to pieces. We're all we got. But when that gate finally opens and they give the all clear, I'm walking out of here. As a man. Help me or don't. It's up to you." To the kid, I said, "Open your goddamn mouth or he's going to shoot you in the head." The kid obeyed. I pulled at his lower lip, then his upper. The kid had braces. I saw nothing else. "He's fine." Owen said, "You sure about that now?" "Yeah." Owen stashed the pistol and used a pocket knife to cut the kid's hands free. "What's your name, kid?" "Corey. I think I'm going to pass out. Owen grabbed a toppled wheelchair and sat it upright. Sit down before you fall down. Corey did, putting his head in his hands, trying to wake up from what he surely thought was a terrible dream. Owen, TJ, and Bruce the wheelchair guy went to go get the basketball player's body away from the fence and presumably onto the fire. More bones for the pile. From behind me, I heard a warbly voice say, "This isn't right. How can they allow this? Where's the government? Where's the army? Where's the police?" That was the first kid I'd checked, Tim, the geeky one. Without turning to face him, I said, "I think we're on our own, man." The men were dragging the basketball kid's body toward the fire. I couldn't watch this again. I turned to face Tim, who was sitting on the ground, cross-legged. "Hey, I don't think you're supposed to sit on the grass. They get mad." "Why?" "It upsets Carlos, apparently." "Who's Carlos?" "I don't know. The groundskeeper? I kind of just got here myself." I could feel something, a rumble at my feet. Faint, like somebody using a jackhammer nearby, or thumping bass-heavy music. But there was no sound, just the tremor in the earth. Then, people were running and shouting. TJ was sprinting toward us and waving his arms. "Get up! Get off the ground!" That finally convinced Tim, who unfolded his legs so he could get up. His face froze in an expression of confused shock. His jaws flexed, his mouth working to form silent words. His eyes met mine, and I had the thought that this is what people look like when they're suddenly stabbed from behind in an alley. "Hey, are you..." He howled in pain. He pushed himself off the ground, but he looked like his butt had been glued there. He screamed again, a garbled and halting sound, as if it was coming through a microphone that kept cutting out. Summoning the thrashing animal strength of a fox ripping off its own leg to get out of a trap, Tim got his feet underneath him and pushed his body up off the ground with everything he had. He rose a foot off the grass, and in a brief moment, I could see that something was still tethering him there. It looked like he was shitting spaghetti. A bundle of thin, writhing tentacles, turning and curling and spinning, working their way up into his bowels from below, like a puppeteer. Tim sat hard back on the ground. He screamed one last time, then spasmed into a seizure that mangled the scream into a spastic uck, uck, uck chant. His eyes rolled back into his head. Sprays of blood erupted from his mouth. I thought I saw one of the thin, yellow spaghetti tentacles flick up between his teeth. Tim's body thrashed once, twice, 3 times. There was a huge, wet slurping sound, and then he slumped over, sideways. When he did, he left behind a wad of guts the size of a potato sack. The yellow tentacles reached up and dragged the pink pile under the dirt, leaving behind nothing but a gopher hole in the ground, soaked in blood. An out-of-breath wheelchair guy stopped behind TJ and said, "Fucking Carlos, man. Told you we should have killed him when we had the chance." TJ seemed amazingly calm because he's seen this several times before. Oh, god damn, holy shit. Sighed and said, "Well, we didn't know then what we know now, did we? What's important is that we do know it now and that we follow procedure." He stared at me. "Right, Spider-Man?" I didn't answer. Owen stomped up behind them and jabbed his finger at me. "He didn't spot the girl. You notice that? Far as I'm concerned, that's the last I want to hear about this so-called 100% hit rate, bro." "Told you he's still foggy from being in the hole." "Yeah, and about that, what went on over there?" "We don't know, do we? That may not even be the same fucking guy. He looks like he don't even know who he is." TJ rebutted. "Yeah, and that girl was wearing red. Or did you not notice that, Owen? That's 3 reds in a row. That's easily 3 out of every 4 infected that was in a red jumpsuit when they burned." "What does that tell you?" "You want to have a talk about that, TJ? We'll convene a panel. You, me, and my Beretta 9mm. How about that?" "Fuck you, man." I love the way TJ says, "fuck you," emphasizing the first syllable hard, like a verbal punch. I wondered if he practiced it in front of a mirror. TJ and Owen stared each other down for a minute. Then TJ turned his attention to the curly-haired kid, Corey. "Come on, let's go inside. It's gonna stink real bad once all 3 bodies get to burning." "Oh. Welcome to quarantine." Everybody headed upstairs. TJ said, "You should get off at the 2nd floor and see the doc. He's been asking about you. Let him see about your memory and all that." Fuck that. I wasn't heading for the 2nd floor or the 5th. I was heading to the roof. I had to get out of this goddamn madhouse. I wanted to get up there, to look out, to see what exactly was holding us in. TJ followed me, trying to tell me that we had done this all before, and that I myself had declared that there was nothing to see. He did not seem surprised when, after hearing this, I still insisted on going up. 5 minutes later, we were 10 stories up, standing among the silent air conditioning units in the bird shit, looking out over the red and green figures loitering in the yard below. The wind picked up, garbage blowing around with it, fluttering paper plates and food wrappers. The trash was starting to pile up against the western fence like a snowdrift. And among all this, the inmates, clumps of red and clumps of green, huddled in conversation. It looked like the world's shittiest Christmas pageant. It had been a mild, mid-November day, but up here, on the cusp of evening, it was goddamn freezing. I didn't care. I paced from one ledge to the other, scanning the landscape. The pulsing grip of a panic attack was slowly squeezing around my brain. Past Dave was right. There was nothing to see. A fence, another fence, and then the town. There were a few white tents set up outside the gate, but there were no guards walking along the fence with rifles. Nothing. That's not enough. That's not enough to fucking keep me in here. Why am I still here? Jesus. The smell of that girl's burning hair. I asked TJ, where are the shooters? The what? The guns, man. The snipers or whatever who shot that kid. They didn't shoot from the asylum. It's too far away. I stared off toward the asylum. The big, depressing, mossy gray brick box sitting nestled among the trees next to a smaller, identical box, as if they had a bunch of those bricks left over from the main building, but not enough to build another whole one. No sign of men with rifles on the roof over there. Or anyone, really. TJ pointed to the sky. I followed his finger to where the birds circled lazily overhead. I shrugged. What am I supposed to be seeing? Man, talking to you. He smiled and shook his head. Like you're a time traveler. No, wait. It's more like you're a caveman they just unfroze. What is this strange devilry, future man? He pointed up again. Sniper drone. 338 caliber rifle mounted under an unmanned aerial vehicle. Computer-assisted targeting. Can put an anti-personnel round into your brain from 1,000 yards out. Did assassinations in Afghanistan. A lot neater than the Hellfire missiles that'd take out the Tango and the entire kid's birthday party the Tango was attending at the time. I looked up at a pair of tiny black crosses drifting below the clouds. I liked it better when I thought they were vultures. He continued. Not that it don't have the missiles, too. Them drones, they look tiny up in the sky. But on the ground, they're pretty big. Almost as big as a real plane. And those Hellfires it's got under the wings, if we stood one up here, it'd be almost as tall as you. If things got out of control down here, drone could launch one down into the yard and take out 30 of us in one shot. Unmanned? So this place is being patrolled by robots? No. Remote control. Somewhere there's a dude sitting at a console, cup of coffee on his right, chili donut on his left, and on his screen is a black and white shot of this hospital turning around and around real slow. He can go to infrared at night, switch to thermal in case there's too much fog, or if we get clever and try to create a smoke screen for cover. Maybe he's looking at us right now. Wave to him. But don't make any threatening moves. Man can zoom in so that your head will fill a screen. Gun barrel is stabilized by computer. Automatically compensates for vibration, wind speed, everything. Okay. I ran my hands through my hair, thinking. Okay, so the operator is down there in one of those tents. Like, if we could get somebody over there and beat the shit out of him, No. We've been over all this before. Drone operations is several states away, in Nevada, believe it or not. The 17th Reconnaissance Squadron, Creech Air Force Base, just outside of Vegas. And even though it's 1,800 miles or so from here, he hits his little red fire button. The command reaches the drone 0.75 seconds later. Fuck. I bent over at the waist. Breathe. Just breathe. I know, right? Weird to think that all the taxes you and me ever paid wouldn't even replace a broken wing on that shit. Just try to calm down, all right? Okay. So there's 2 of them up there? He nodded. I'd say one's a spotter. Probably set to scan the whole grounds at once. The other's got the guns. Okay, so how about we... And before you ask, no. We can't all rush the walls at different spots at once to give them too many targets to hit. They got ground-based hardware outside the fence. Unmanned units called gladiators. Just look like little jeeps, only with no place for a driver to sit. Guns mounted on the back. Between them, they got sensors in the ground that detect vibration. They got motion detectors, body heat sensors, lasers, all that shit. Anything bigger than a bunny rabbit tries to sneak through, something bad will happen to it. And no, we don't have any way of tunneling out. Even if we had equipment, which we don't, and that means to do the work without the UAVs noticing, which we also don't, where do we tunnel to? We got no intel about the situation out there, other than the fact that the damned Reaper command center is right over there. I mean, I know the geography, and you probably do too. But even if we could find an exit spot with nice, soft dirt, one that's secluded and not too far away, how do you know you don't pop up right into a patrol? 6 weeks of digging. Wasted. There's that word again. Reaper. You ever heard of that in your life before this week? He shook his head. Nope. But when shit went bad last week and the CDC pulled out their people, this Reaper took their place. You see the gear on those guys? Hazmat suits tricked out with Kevlar. Modified M4s with targeting HUDs in their damned faceplates. You think they came up with that gear overnight? Shit. Each of those suits probably cost $500,000. That's specialized equipment. And all these dudes know exactly what they're doing. They sweep in, and suddenly they're in charge. They're ordering around us National Guard like we answer to them. And nobody says shit otherwise. They tell me to stay behind, and I'm like, bullshit. I'm getting on that chopper. But guess what? Here I am. Never seen anything like this. I walked back across the roof to look out at the rear of the building and the little strip of woods that from up here looked like the end product of a Brazilian bikini wax. Smoke rose in the distance. Maybe somebody else's house on fire. I heard no sirens. TJ followed me and said, "You know, this conversation is a lot more discouraging the second time round." I said, "But there's nobody here. That's what I can't get over. The whole operation on this side looks like it's staffed by like 2 people. So what? Is it all just the drones and sensors and shit? Well, yeah. They're trying to keep down the infection risk. They don't need people like me swelling the ranks of the infected. And if you ask me, the automated shit seems like it's working just fine. You saw that kid try to climb the fence? From behind us, a female voice said, "You should write down everything he has said up to now, so he doesn't have to do it all again if your brains get scrambled next week." Hope had joined us on the roof. I said, "I just don't accept that there's no way out of this place. I mean, it wasn't built as a prison, right? It was built as a hospital. No way they've covered everything." Hope laughed. And to TJ, she said, "It's so funny to see him go through the 5 stages again." I said, "The what?" TJ explained. "It's the same for everybody they dump in here. First, it's the confusion, right? What's happening? Where am I? That's stage 1. But then you go to stage 2. Pissed off. How can they do this to us, man? I got rights. Okay. Then there's stage 3. Defiance. I gotta get out of here. There's gotta be a way out. Stage 4 is the depression. Why me, man? Boo-hoo. I want to go home. I want to see my girl. Then, hopefully you land at stage 5, which is, we gotta make the best of the situation and be smart. I really made it all the way to stage 5 before? Hope said, "Oh, no. You stopped somewhere between stage 2 and 3. 12 hours until the massacre at Firth Asylum." John's head was pounding. He tried to call Amy back, but she was ignoring him. He had a sick feeling that began around his navel and extended all the way up to his scalp. No doubt that was partly due to the huge egg breakfast he had eaten at sunrise to help absorb some of the vodka and Crown Royal he had flushed through his system. But the feeling was mostly due to the fact that he had clearly hit one of his patented rough stretches. Those bits of his life where every string of shitty luck converged into one horrible knot that everybody blamed him for. As if he had chosen things to work out this way. No, Amy, I did not just decide to bring about the apocalypse this month. Times like this, you just got to disconnect from the world and write it out. It was a process he and Dave had. The two of them rarely hitting low points at the same time. One always there to cheer the other up and to pull them off the sofa to go hit the town. Dave always made air quotes around town when referring to undisclosed, since the party train only ran through 2 bars and Munch's trailer. John glanced around, half expecting to see a disheveled Dave pulling himself up from some spot on the floor. He'd be squinting, his hair matted down, looking like he'd just been shit out of a dinosaur. He wasn't there, of course, and wouldn't ever be there again. John immediately wanted to go back to sleep on the floor. Wait, whose floor? Where the hell was he? John had told Amy on the phone that he was back at the motel, but that was because he didn't want to admit that he didn't actually know. He was in somebody's basement. There was a full bar down here. Maybe a frat house? He was close to campus, he knew that. The last thing he remembered was coming down here and watching round-the-clock apocalypse coverage on their 60-inch TV. Then, someone introduced him to the modern wonder that was the Irish car bomb. Guinness, Bailey's, and Jameson. And the next thing he knew, his cell phone was shooting noise bullets into his temple, and the clock said afternoon. John surveyed the floor around him and saw a lot of tall black guys. He had gotten drunk with the basketball team, apparently. John stumbled to his feet and spent a few minutes looking for his shoes. He never found them, so he figured he would just trade with one of the guys there. He put on a pair of Nikes he found by the door that were downright huge. Seemed to be size 18 or so. They looked newer than his own, but he figured he could catch up with the guy later to see if he wanted to trade back. Some people like shoes that are a little more broken in. John realized he was staring at the wall and that some time had passed without him realizing it. Brain was still trying to boot up, loading all the extra shit into the taskbar. Finally, he made himself get up and head out. Amy was gonna do something rash if he wasn't there to calm her down. He hit the cold air and found the Bronco parked haphazardly across the lawn. John cursed when he saw some jackass had spray-painted zombie assault vehicle on the door, but then recognized it as his own handwriting. He pulled out and saw the dorm tower looming ahead. He actually wasn't more than 5 or 6 blocks away from Amy's bus stop at that Mexican place. Awesome. He let the Bronco idle for a bit so the heater would have time to warm up. John found the bus stop easily enough. But instead of a bus, pulled up to it were 4 windowless black vans. Yellow tape roped off the whole sidewalk in the parking lot beyond. Guys in black spacesuits were prowling everywhere. Amy was nowhere in sight. John stopped right in the middle of the street, threw open the door off the Bronco, and ran to the first van. He yanked open the back door. "Amy, hey!" Nobody there. He ran to the second one. Before he could get it open, 2 of the spacesuit guys grabbed him. Sir, you're risking contamination by... Amy! The men dragged John away from the vans and wrestled him to the sidewalk. John got a good look at what they were wearing, and it was fucking terrifying. The glass on their helmets was tinted so that when light hit it, it glinted blood red. They had armor and machine guns, and wires and shit running around like they were on their way to fight a war on Mars. A third spacesuit guy came up to them and said, "What is he, family?" John said, "Yes, I'm Amy Sullivan's dad." "Sir, do you know?" "Listen, I'm infected. Take me and let her go. The infection, I got it all over. Look at my enormous inhuman feet." The guy said to his coworkers, "Okay, see if you can get ID and let him ride with Otto." For the second time in 9 days, John's hands were bound with the heavy-duty zip-tie handcuffs. He was stuffed into the third van, but Amy wasn't in there either. 20 minutes later, it jolted to a start, and he knew that he and Amy would be in undisclosed in a little over 2 hours. He had that much time to think up a plan. 45 minutes earlier. 45 minutes before John would get hauled away in a van. Amy sat and waited at the bus stop bench for the government to get there, watching as 4 more people with gun cases and army satchels strolled by. Were they like a militia or something? The sight of these regular people wandering around with all that hardware scared her more than the zombie thing. If everything fell apart and civilization came down to this, to guns and people fighting over food and medicine, what would she do? She wasn't strong. She didn't have strong friends. She didn't have a family. The closest she had was David. And what if he was hurt or... Excuse me, what's your name? Amy looked up, expecting to see a guy in a jumpsuit and gas mask or something. Instead, it was a hipster-looking guy with a beard and glasses and wearing a black peacoat. Amy? Hi, my name's Josh, and we keep running into each other. We sat across from each other on the bus on Z-Day, remember? Then I come back and it turns out you live on the floor below me. Amy remembered him now, but wouldn't if he hadn't brought it up. He was a nice-looking guy, but he also looked exactly like 700 other guys on campus. Same build, same beard, same glasses. Z-Day? Oh, yeah, I remember. Did you lose someone in undisclosed? My boyfriend is there. Me too. Not my boyfriend. I'm not gay. My brother, my nephew, and one of my best friends. That's 3 different people, obviously. Are you here for the meeting? Oh, no, I'm just waiting for a ride. She realized in that moment the strap Josh had draped over his shoulder was not a backpack, but a rifle case. Wait, is this the gun meeting everybody's going to? Because I left all my guns at home. You should come anyway. From an inside pocket, he pulled out a sheet of paper, and she didn't need to read the details. She recognized the huge letter Z the moment he unfolded it. When your ride gets here, bring them too. Oh, I don't think they'll want to come. The CDC or whoever is coming to pick me up to take me to quarantine. Alarmed, Josh said. Excuse me? Yep. I've wasted a week here and finally I said, screw it. If that's where David is, that's where I want to be. I told them to come get me. Josh looked nervously down the street in both directions, then said, Amy, listen. You need to come with me. Give me 10 minutes to explain what's going on. If after that you don't think I'm right about this, I'll bring you back here. Hell, we'll drive you down to the checkpoint ourselves. But you don't have all the information, and I'm telling you right now, if you go with whoever shows up here, you will never see your boyfriend again. Another nervous scan of the street. Come on, I'll explain everything once we're off the sidewalk. Amy sighed and pushed the hair out of her eyes. So many kidnappings begin this way. We're going right down there to the powder keg. It'll be packed with people. It's full of rednecks with assault rifles and shotguns. If anyone tries to put a hand on you, they'll be perforated. Come on, there's no time. He put a hand under her armpit. Up. She went with him. They hurried along the sidewalk, Josh with his hand flat on her back, pushing her along and ducking down like they were dodging machine gun fire. The powder keg was a gun store / shooting range and not, as Amy had thought, a gay nightclub. This wasn't a snide private joke. It would be days later before she would remember that the nightclub she was thinking of was called the Bomb Shelter. The place was absolutely packed, and the crowd was armed to the teeth. In any other country on Earth, this kind of gathering would be cause for an all-out military response. Josh pushed her through the door and into a crowd. He stopped to tell two burly shotgun-bearing men, "Reaper is looking for her. If they show up at the door, tell them we've never seen her." Amy thought, did he say Reavers? Like on Firefly? Josh pushed inside, pulling Amy through the crowd behind him to the front of the room. Amy still carrying her bag of pharmacy stuff and her stupid pillow. He reached a spot where a white bedsheet was hanging in front of a display of earmuffs and safety glasses. Josh put his back to the wall and stepped up on a huge cardboard box of clay pigeons, so he'd be a couple of feet above the crowd. He quieted everybody and said, "Okay, everybody, we don't have much time. Now, I need to get something out of the way first thing. I begin every meeting with this. Some of you were dragged here by friends or family, rolling your eyes over the whole zombie thing. If you don't like that word, feel free to pick one that suits you. The Zombie Response Squad was a club promoting physical fitness, weapons training, and safety, and wilderness survival. These are skills that I believe every human should possess regardless. They can save your life in the event of anything from natural disaster to civil unrest. The zombie angle was just our way of having fun with it, and obviously, we had no way of knowing that, something like this was coming." He paused there. That seemed like a really important point to him. "So, if you don't like the word zombie, feel free to mentally substitute any word you wish when you hear it. But for the purposes of this discussion, I am going to use the word zombie. The infected are contagious. They exhibit animalistic and predatory behavior towards other humans. They can survive massive organ and tissue trauma. So regardless of what science eventually figures out about this outbreak, right now, the danger these creatures pose to your personal safety and the method of dealing with them fully fits the profile of zombie. So just deal with it." Josh gestured to a guy in the crowd and said, "Frito?" That was presumably Frito's cue to turn on a projector hooked to his laptop. An image appeared on the sheet next to Josh. Oh, my dear God, Amy thought. They have a PowerPoint presentation. Josh said, "Okay, very quickly, here's what we know. For some of you, this will be repeat information. Just bear with me here." A blue slide appeared with white writing in Comic Sans font. It said, "Origins, ? We don't know where the infected originated from. We may never know. Since it behaves in a way that's different from anything known to science, I prefer to think it's man-made. In fact, I also happen to think that the pathogen was specifically engineered to zombify the victims for the psychological impact. Humans have been scared of Walking Dead since hunter-gatherer days. Zombies are burned into our genetic memory. I was just reading about that in a book. Frito?" Next slide. This one had a line graph, starting at 0 and spiking rapidly upward. The left to right axis was ticking off the days since the outbreak. OGZA estimates that the infection rate within the borders of undisclosed was at 20% as of last Wednesday. It exceeded 50% yesterday and will be at 90 to 100% within 48 hours. Gasps from the crowd. Amy thought, that couldn't be true, could it? And who was OGZA? Frito hit the next slide. It said, "Who is OGZA? ? For those of you who haven't been to previous meetings and who have been following this story in the mainstream press, let me quickly fill you in. A group of resistance fighters have formed inside town, gathering supplies and scouting secure locations where they can hole up as the situation deteriorates. They call themselves Outbreak Ground Zero Alpha. He brought up his final slide, which said, "So what about the government?" One final point I want to make, and I leave this for last because it's what you need to keep with you when you watch TV tonight. An anonymous source within the government has leaked a series of emails between the Centers for Disease Control and the Task Force for Rapid Exotic Pathogen Eradication / Research, outlining what they call Operation Leopard. From these emails, we know that Reaper determined within 48 hours of the outbreak, based on autopsies of infected dead, that the physiological changes caused by the infection are radical and irreversible. Another "let that sink in" pause from Josh. Even if they could kill off the agent of the change, the bacteria, virus, parasite, or whatever it is, the subject's entire nervous system is no longer recognizable as human. There is nothing to be done for the infected. From there, they have made the logical conclusion that quarantine is not separating the infected so that they may be isolated and cured. They are being separated and concentrated in one location so that they can be wiped out in one step. Just like amputating an infected limb. He let that sink in too. And our goal, as of now, is to do whatever we can to help them accomplish this. The room erupted in cheers.